Speaker, it's an honor to rise in the chamber today on the issue of our strategic partnership with Ukraine. As you may know, I have been sanctioned by Russia 3 times. I've also had the honor of visiting Ukraine multiple times, pre-Maidan, during Maidan, post-Maidan, and several times thereafter, just before the war. I think it's important as we get into this debate to take a step back and consider the environment that we're in right now. When America withdrew from Afghanistan, they signaled 2 things. First, they signaled the end of Pax Americana, of a peace that had structured the world in the aftermath of the Cold War and created the greatest period of peace humanity had known. The second thing they signaled was a retreat for NATO from Afghanistan from a legitimate war it waged after an Article 5 attack on New York on September 11, 2001. In the aftermath of that moment, Mr. Speaker, we have watched all of our Cold War arrangements unfurl and the rule of law undermined. We saw in Hong Kong the end of a deal negotiated by Margaret Thatcher and Deng Xiaoping, a deal that was supposed to last for 50 years, but ended at its halfway mark with the imposition of the national security law on the people of Hong Kong. And what was the Western response? It was muted. In the aftermath of that, Russia turned up its invasion of Ukraine nearly 100-fold. They dispatched battalions of soldiers, arrogantly driving to Kiev with the purpose of conquest. And the Western response? President Zelensky, we have a plane for you, not the guns you need to fight and win the war. You know, it's interesting to me that President Putin and Xi Jinping sat at the Beijing Olympics prior to that invasion to map out their unlimited ambition around the world. And part of that ambition included not just the borders of Ukraine and the rest of the world in the Middle East and Asia, it also included ambition on our northern borders, our Arctic sovereignty. Only a few months ago, part of this constellation of authoritarians around the world, with their interoperable cybersecurity effects, with their interoperable drone warfare, dispatched Iran and their constellation of proxies in the region to wage war on the Western alliance yet again. They did it in Iran on the horrific attacks of October 7th, which claimed over 1,000 Israeli lives, and they did it in the northern part of Israel through rockets launched from Hezbollah fighters, rockets that were Iranian-built, Iranian-designed, with technologies from Russia and from China. And in the ensuing aftermath of the chaos we have seen, including the conflict in Gaza, which has claimed so many lives, we also see a disruption to our global trade supply chains across the Red Sea region. Attacks from Iranian-backed Houthis on shipping conglomerates that drive up the costs of everything everywhere, creating chaos and disorder in international markets, compelling a response from the West to make the authoritarian stop. Only weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, this same network cut data cables in the Red Sea region that supplied 25% of data from the Indo-Pacific region into Europe. These are massive attacks across our Western alliance. And as the West comes under attack, it is time for us as a country to grow up and join an alliance of democracies around the world that reclaim policies of peace through strength instead of experimenting with various versions of appeasement. So, Mr. Speaker, in this discussion, in this take-note debate today, I'm encouraged by the strategic partnership with Ukraine and Canada that has been proposed and agreed to. What's more important is implementing 3 particular parts of it, which will define Canadian leadership and help change the course of history for the better. First, Ukraine must win the war. President Zelensky rose in this chamber and asked for one thing. He said, end Russia's weaponization of energy. Why would he say that? Well, he understood Canada is a sole NATO ally with the potential to backfill European energy demand with $3 trillion worth of natural resource strength, the fourth largest oil reserves in the world, NATO's 3rd largest reserves of natural gas, and the capacity to scale nuclear and agricultural products and technologies for the world. Putin today mimics Stalin nearly a century ago, bent on creating famine by weaponizing the food supply, disrupting international energy supply chains, burning and blockading grain supplies for the developing world so that it cannot reach fragile markets. Vladimir Putin had spent years choreographing Germany's dependencies on Russian oil, having exploited that to shake down Europe. He intervened in Syria and Libya to subvert pipelines that would supply Europe and amplified misinformation against our own Canadian energy. It ensured a steady stream of revenue for Russia's war machine, nearly $1 billion a day, $250 million a day from Germany alone to fund his war machine. And when Germany finally realized the costs of this, Chancellor Scholz and subsequently President Vladimir Zelensky came knocking on our door for Canadian energy, and both times we turned them away. Russia and Iran scale production today, evade sanctions, provide discounted prices to Beijing to wage their wars in Europe and the Middle East. Qatar, host to Hamas, inked a 3.5 million ton gas deal with France just this week. If NDP Liberals truly care about trading relationships that support Ukraine, then they can do the one game-changing thing that the world has been demanding, which is to end Russia's weaponization of energy and let Canadian resources be what fuels, feeds, and secures the world. Second, Mr. Speaker, defense production. In our inventories as a country, we can provide Ukrainians the CR-V7 missiles they require, mobile hospitals that were purchased but not delivered. We can provide 155mm shells of ammunition and the light armored vehicles they require to push back against the Russian tide. This is a request that came directly from Ukraine as well. It was the Ukrainian ambassador that took to our mainstream press, sat on our network cables, demanding that this government come to negotiate defense production and defense supply. I'm encouraged to see it as part of the strategic partnership laid out here today, but I believe it's a conservative government that would deliver the inventory and the defense production partnerships Ukraine requires. Finally, compensation for Ukrainians as they pursue the difficult task of rebuilding their economy. We know that Russia has $300 billion of frozen assets across the Western world, of which $200 billion reside in Europe, $4 billion in the United States. The requirement Ukraine will have to rebuild its economy is nearly $600 billion. Repurposing these assets for losses, injuries, and damages caused by Russian aggression in Ukraine is a critical requirement. We're at the halfway mark of that, but wouldn't it be wonderful to think of Canada as a center of investment, of infrastructure, and of the partnerships that are required to rebuild the Ukrainian economy and the world thereafter? We have all the know-how, the skills, and the expertise across our cities and our people to be a critical part of rebuilding this vital democracy. So let me close with this. The democratic world needs to arrive to a shared understanding of the rivals we must now confront. Rivals to our Atlantic alliances, most fiercely met by Ukrainian soldiers in the borders that they are fighting so hard to defend. Rivals across the Middle East, with our partners there, with borders that they deserve to maintain, and with terrorist extremists that deserve to be defeated. And rivals that are threatening the order of the Indo-Pacific region, rivals that require deterrence, to know that the resolve of the world is against their ambition to reorganize the world, and that Canada would be a fierce and vital part of that partnership. So thank you for the opportunity to provide some views on this debate. We support this strategic partnership with Ukraine as an important step forward, and we believe that our conservative future government will deliver the energy, the munitions and material, and the compensation for investment and infrastructure that Ukraine requires. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments?